Summer break isn't just a time of the year. It's a place. It's a place that I put all my hopes and aspirations. If I can just make it there, then I'll be able to wake up and work on my hobbies, make these videos, teach myself about art. It's the best place. The reality though, the first part is spent recovering from the school year, the middle part is spent catching up with friends and family that I ignored all year, and the last part is spent trying to fix the problems of the previous school year before the new one starts. In The Merchant of Venice, Belmont is a sort of paradise. It's a place where everybody puts their hopes and aspirations. If Bassanio could just get there, if Jessica could escape Shylock's house and travel there with Lorenzo, if Antonio can make it out of his trial, then they can all end up in Belmont. Bassanio can invite everybody to dinner and never go into debt. Love can be divorced from the diction of exchange and financial transaction, and everybody can just be together, stress-free. All those problems of Venice can be left behind. I'm not so sure it's actually going to go that way, though. Act 5 begins in Belmont, where Lorenzo and Jessica sit by themselves in paradise. They're talking about how great of a night it is while comparing their love to the great loves of the past, Troilus and Cressida, Pyramus and Thisbe, Dido and Aeneas. Beneath those comparisons, though, is the knowledge that none of those love stories worked out too well. Circumstance forces Cressida to be unfaithful. Pyramus and Thisbe end in double suicide, just like Romeo and Juliet, and Aeneas will leave Dido, who also commits suicide. Troilus is a Trojan, and Cressida lives in the Greek camp. Pyramus and Thisbe come from warring families. Dido has responsibilities in Carthage, and Aeneas is fated for Rome. Lorenzo is, of course, Christian, and Jessica is Jewish. They are star-crossed lovers, just like the rest of them. And if the rest of the world doesn't exist, their love could work, but other people do exist. Their love does not exist outside of pre-existing conflicts and responsibilities. As we saw in the final moments of Act 4, when Lancelot harassed Jessica over her family and the faith that she was born into, Jessica will never fully be accepted here. So much of this play has been about in-group and out-groups, and this small interaction before everybody else joins the party at Belmont shows the impact of exclusive communities with their purity tests and gatekeeping on individuals. Specifically, the ability for individuals to form relationships outside of those narrow definitions of pre-existing communities. It's good to note that that line, "I am never merry when I hear sweet music," is the final line that Jessica is going to speak in this play. The director and actor playing her have a lot of freedom with how to play this character for the rest of the act, for the rest of the play. Most likely, she'll be pushed to the margins as more characters enter the stage. Productions of this play will sometimes have her and Antonio be the last to exit. They're the two outcasts in paradise, but we'll get there. Porsha and Nerissa enter first. Porsha sees a small candle in the window and meditates on how bright it seems to shine. Nerissa then notes that they hadn't even seen it when the moon was out and showing brightly. And then Porsha gets all philosophical on us. She says, "So doth the greater glory dim the less. A substitute shines brightly as a king until a king be by, and then his state empties itself as doth an inland brook into the main of waters." Basically, she's saying that context matters. When something as big and bright as the moon is in the sky, no one will ever notice a little candle. When somebody as rich and powerful as Porsha enters the scene, we don't even notice Jessica exist. She disappears from the play. Similarly, when somebody wealthy, beautiful, and virtuous enters a life, let's say, for example, Bassanio's life, Antonio might disappear. This is similar to the transformations that I discussed in my Act 3 video. Porsha is the brightest light in this play. She's got the most words, and she does make many other characters just disappear. Perhaps most notably in the last act when she vanquishes Shylock from the stage of this play. But she's also vanquished Morocco, Aragon, and in some ways Antonio. So Porsha, at this point, in her role as Alpha, tells Lorenzo to be cool and not say anything about her absence. When Bassanio arrives shortly after, Bassanio is quick to introduce Antonio and Porsha, but while this introduction is happening, Gratiano and Nerissa get into a bit of an argument. Gratiano is swearing he gave the ring to a law clerk and not to another woman, and what follows is just a straight comedic scene filled with dramatic irony. We know that Gratiano did indeed give it to a woman. He gave it to Nerissa. So nearly all of Nerissa's lines here, similar to Porsha's lines, will be jokes that the two women share with the audience, but that the men do not understand. So if their position of power had not already been established, then this certainly does the trick. The women have knowledge that the men do not have. They can laugh and be playful while the men are defensive and fearful. Bassanio continues to be his charming self throughout this entire scene. He tells the audience that he'd rather cut off his hand than admit to giving away the ring. He's honest about it. He tells her right away what happened, and it's perhaps because he has to be. Gratiano throws him under the bus immediately. So if Act 1 showed us the triumph of male friendship over promises made to women, well, male friendship is just straight up under attack in Act 5. Gratiano does nothing to protect Bassanio, and from this point forward, Porsha controls everybody's attention. If male friendship is to survive, it will be on her terms. Both Porsha and Nerissa say that if the lawyer or clerk approach them, they will yield their bodies and become as liberal as you. I'll not deny him anything I have, no, not my body, nor my husband's bed. Know him I shall, I am well sure of it. Which obviously has a bunch of dramatic irony, like, of course she'll share her body with herself. But these lines also address male fears of infidelity. Bassanio and Gratiano are terrified at this point. I also find it interesting to note here how Porsha is using this dramatic irony to continue to identify as male. I'll not deny him anything I have. She's speaking in the third person there, since she is the doctor she's speaking of. She's going to have her way here. She won't be denied. And later in this act, Bassanio will continue with this gender fluidity when he says, "Sweet doctor, you shall be my bedfellow." I don't know where I'm going with this. I just think it's kind of cool. Anyway, Antonio interrupts this fighting and says, "I once did lend my body for his wealth, which, but for him that had your husband's ring, had quite miscarried. I dare be bound again, my soul upon the forfeit, that your lord will never more break faith advisedly." So once again, Antonio steps in to guarantee a contract on behalf of Bassanio. This time, it's to guarantee that Bassanio stays loyal to Porsha. So Antonio's love for Bassanio is now subordinated to the authority of the marriage. Heteronormative love with a contract of marriage wins this day. And to gain that victory, some stuff needed to be sacrificed. Shylock and the people that he represents in the play are crushed. In fact, outsiders in all forms, suitors from the north and south, need to be exiled. The stability of this marriage depends on the conversion or exile of outsiders. The queer relationship between Antonio and Bassanio is tamed and confined. It can exist, but only in service of the marriage. This is a steep price to pay. I mean, marriage wins. This is a comedy. Everybody gets married. It just kind of feels gross, though. And on the topic of Antonio and Bassanio's relationship, what happens next is really interesting. Porsha gives Antonio the ring, and I imagine him getting down on one knee with the ring and saying his next line, "Here, Lord Bassanio, swear to keep this ring." And with that proposal, Porsha becomes the most important person in Bassanio's life, but Antonio also has a meaningful role to play in that union, so he gets to keep his connection to Bassanio. He's not completely left out, though he is the only single person on the stage when the couples file out. That is, unless the director decides to frame this as a polyamorous relationship. That could work too. And after this, we hear that Antonio's ships have come in, so that's cool. Of course, Porsha is the one to announce that. When she's in charge, and you're on her good side, you're invincible. Of course, his ships come in after he pledges allegiance to the matriarch of Belmont. The play ends, of course, with Gratiano, who can never shut up and always needs the last word. His final lines are a sexual pun that articulates his fear of Nerissa's infidelity. So it's a comedy, I guess. It ends with marriages, but it also ends with fear. If we are somehow able to look past that fear, though, everybody does get to live in paradise. Well, not Shylock. Or Antonio. And Jessica is physically there, but she'll always feel like an outsider. But everybody else gets to live in paradise, in this paradise, with Porsha in control and Bassanio inviting people to dinner. So let's dig into this ending a little bit more. At first, it looks like it might seem as though Belmont is put into stark contrast with Venice. Venice is a place where love is expressed with the vocabulary of finance. Bassanio says that he owes Antonio money and love, lumping both together as debts. Jessica gilds herself with money as she joins Lorenzo, and Shylock equates his daughter with ducats. Love and money are linked in Venice, but Belmont, with its excess of money, seems like it could be a place where love can be love. Jessica and Lorenzo can sit together and look at the stars free from financial concerns. It's not really like that though, is it? Or at least the distinction is a bit more complicated than that. In Belmont, relationships are still controlled by contracts. First, Porsha is contracted to marry whoever wins the casket game. Then she codifies her relationship with Bassanio by giving him a ring, as does Nerissa. Then, in Act 5, we have Antonio as a guarantor of the marriage contract, just as he did with the financial contract in Act 1. Antonio and Bassanio's relationship has its problems, but it is not limited to the terms of a contract. Any obligation they feel towards each other is imposed by their own feelings towards each other, not by a contract. A lot of this play is driven by and struggles with the naivety with which Antonio lends money and the predatory contract-based way that Shylock lends money. At the same time, this play struggles with the way that we exchange love. You can give it freely and naively, as Antonio does. Or you can give it with conditions, as Porsha does with the ring. So Belmont at first seems like a paradise, a place where love can be love, free from financial constraints. There is enough money, and no outsiders threaten anybody's security. But is this really what we want? Is this paradise? A world bound by contracts that we are compelled by fear to uphold? A place where types of love are hierarchically ordered with heteronormative marriage on top and all other forms subordinated? A place of xenophobia with an increasingly homogenous population? The play shows us that when everything is bound by a contract like this, the final emotion is fear. This play ends with everybody narrowly escaping death and all the couples are married off. It's a comedy, but it doesn't feel like one. And that's all for this act-by-act analysis of the season. In the final episode, I'm going to be digging into the character of Porsha in a little bit more detail. Subscribe if you want to know when that one is released or for future seasons. Thank you for watching.